name is Nicole Wilson, and the economist that I chose to present on is Milton Friedman. To give just a short overview of Milton Friedman, he was born in New York City, July 31st of 1912. His family owned a dry goods store, and they were Jewish immigrants, so they really didn't have much money. But even though they couldn't make much and they didn't have much, they knew that Milton Friedman was going to go to college whenever he grew up. He ended up going to Rahway High School in 1928 whenever his family moved to New Jersey. They moved whenever he was 1 year old. He graduated before he turned 16, and he had remarkable math skills. He was very gifted with math, even whenever he was just starting school in kindergarten and first grade. His inspiration came from the Great Depression, not the necessary and direct result of the stock market crash of October of 1929, but it was part of a speculative investment bubble is what he determined the Great Depression to be. He also had two of his professors while he was learning at college encouraged him to pursue economics as a career instead of mathematics. Bubble popping itself means that it was instigated by the Federal Reserve's raising the discount rate. And the discount rate is the interest rate the Feds charge on loans to commercial banks. Friedman believed the economy could have relieved and recovered rapidly if the Feds hadn't engaged in a series of absolutely disastrous policies in the aftermath of the crash. That's why the crash was so large. It took forever for everybody to dig themselves out. He specialized in mathematics and economics whenever he was in school. He learned and very much supports price theory, and he's known as the father of monetarism. He was a main advisor for Reaganomics. He helped advise Reagan whenever he was running for presidency. He also went on to help Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher with her ideas of Thatcherism. He also made his own test called the Friedman test, which is basically stating that if you make this much, you're going to spend this much because you don't have much and this is what you want. But it's the complete opposite if you're making this much. You're actually going to spend very little because you're investing that money. Friedman died on November 16, 2006 in San Francisco, California. He married Rose Friedman, and he had two kids named David and Jan. He worked as a research economist with the National Bureau of Economic Research in New York City. And then after that, he worked with the U.S. Treasury and Tax Research Division. His areas of studies: monetarism was what he was mainly famous for, and that's the economic theory that focuses on the macro effects of money and central banking, meaning you make this much, you want to spend this much. He argues that excessive expansion of the dollar supply is inflationary, and monetary authorities should focus on maintaining price stability in order to keep an economic balance. Price theory, which is something else that he went over, is the economic theory explaining that in a free market, price reflects interaction of supply and demand. The supply and demand curve is always going to be changing, so the market has to react accordingly. And the price is set so the supply equates the demand, meaning that everything is at ground zero. The history of Reaganomics, it had 4 pillars. He focused completely on the supply side of economics. It was to reduce the growth of government spending, reduce federal income tax and capital gains, reduce the government regulation, and tighten the money supply to reduce inflation. He stated that though Reagan didn't achieve all of his goals, he made good progress. It's true that it took a long time for everybody to get out of the Great Depression, but Reaganomics did seem to help. Friedman worked with Margaret Thatcher on Thatcherism, and the thing that people don't recognize, according to Milton Friedman, is that Margaret Thatcher isn't in terms of belief a Tory. She's a 19th century liberal. A Tory is a term for a political philosophy with characteristics of traditionals, high cultures, and monarchism, meaning that she's a very traditionalistic kind of person. The Friedman test, which is his own test that he published along with his wife, it was used to detect differences of ranks in inventory. It's a one-way repeated measurement analysis of variances by ranking. This graph here shows that the Reagan tax cut boosted growth of the GDP. And this comes from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. And the Reagan tax cut actually created jobs. This is an example of the Friedman test. Down here is the equation that he came up with, showing that if subject 1 had 10 white roses, that means that the variances of 7 red roses to 10 is going to be 8 roses per rose. So another easier way to explain this is that n pie judges each judge or rate k pies. So then, are any of the pies ranked consistently higher or lower than the other pies? It's basically just a normal math problem that you do every day. Modern economics, he focused on floating exchange, which is the currency's value fluctuating in response to market mechanisms in the foreign exchange market. It also refers to a floating currency, and that's contrasting with a fixed currency, where the currency value is fixed against value of another currency or to another measure of value. So a fixed currency would be an example of gold. Gold is at a fixed rate most of the time. If that changes, then it becomes a floating exchange rate, or not a fixed currency, a floating currency. The permanent income hypothesis attempts to explain how consumption spreads over your lifetime. It supposes that a person's consumption at one point in time is determined not only by your current income, but by your future income. If you know that you are in a stable job and you do not see any kind of a foreclosure of the business, any kind of a bankruptcy, then you're going to spend more than what you really have because you feel that you are in a safe environment. It's based on what you call your permanent income. Your permanent income is not the income that you're making right now. It's the income that you have right now, plus what you think you're going to get in the future. The change in permanent income are what drive changes in the consumer consumption patterns. So the permanent income is determined by assets, like your physical, your shares or your bonds that you invest in, or your human, your education and your experiences. These influence the consumer's ability to earn said income. And that is Milton Friedman.
Questions?
This whole, you have this amount of money, you spend that money, is it based on a percentage of your income, or is it based off of you literally have no money, so you're going to spend, as much as you can?
It's based off of you have very little money, but your needs are going to be greater than the amount of money that you have. Let's say you have $12 in your pocket. You go out to Walmart and you see this awesome DVD player for $15. Though you only have $12